In this movie, we are going to set up the different sizes that we want for our different content regions for our project. We're going to be setting up our overall page size, as well as the size for our header region, our site mission, our related area, and our sidebar. So let's go ahead here and jump into our HTML because we need to set up another div tag here that's going to contain the entire document. So up here, right after the body tag, I'm going to put in another div, and I'm going to set up the ID to page. And then I'll scroll all the way down to the bottom, and right before the closing body tag, I'll close out my page div. Now that's all the new structure I need to add for this movie, so I'll go ahead and save that, and then I'll jump over to my CSS, and I'll scroll back up to the top here, and right after our type section and before the header, I'll put in my page rule. And because we're designing our website so that it's going to be as flexible as possible, I'm going to set up a minimum and maximum width. So I'm going to set the max width here to 1100 pixels, and that will allow people with larger displays to resize their browser so that they can resize that content up to a certain point, after which it will no longer resize. And I will also set something up for my min width so that people can again scale the browser down to a certain point, after which it will stop scaling. And I'll set that up to 700 pixels. So I'll go ahead and save this, and then jump over here into my browser and then refresh, and let me make sure that I saved my HTML. Refresh my browser, and then I'll scale it down by, there we go. Of course, my max width is not showing here because of the size of my browser window. If I jump back into my CSS and change my maximum width here to, let's say, 700 pixels instead, and my minimum width to 400 pixels, I refresh. If I resize my browser window, I see that it's staying put, but if I go below that, it's going to resize until it gets down to 400 pixels. So the min height and min width, or max height and max width, are good things to set up. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back into my CSS, and I'll change it back to what it was before. There we go. And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and set up our H1 and H2s in the header for a certain size. Now I'm setting this up for the H1 because we're going to end up putting a graphic in there, and we'll see that in an upcoming section. So I'll move on down here to the H1 in the header, and I'll set up my width here to be 400 pixels, and I'll set up my height to be 200 pixels, and then I'll set up the width for my H2 to be 60%. And then while I'm working with the other content in the header, I'll set up the site mission to have a width of 320 pixels. So I'll go ahead and save that and jump back into my browser and then refresh and see the effect. Now if you notice here, we've got a big empty space here for our header, and then below that we have the site mission, and notice how the site mission is now here instead of over to the side. Well, that's because we have defined our width as being 320 pixels, and that's the space that it's taking up. And because we've defined the width to be less than 100% of the browser window, it's aligning it to the edge of that box, not to the edge of the browser window. Now also, I'm going to go ahead and resize my window here, and notice how the Kindling for Open Source Creativity scaled when I did that, because it's set up to be 60%. So if I maximize again, it scales back out because we have the width set to something that's flexible. That is, we have the width set using percentages. I've got two more rules that I want to set up here for the sidebar and the related. So I'll go ahead and scroll on down here, and there's the related and then the sidebar. So the related, I'm going to set the width here to be 13M, and I'll set the sidebar to have a width of 14M. I'll go ahead and save that and then jump back into my browser and refresh. And I'll see that the related links don't really change because they were fitting inside of that section anyway. But the sidebar, notice how it affected both of the children divisions, the about and the tip of the week. Now what's interesting is that at this point you should end up seeing that we now have the makings for some of our columns that we'll see for our website. Now that concludes our look at applying our size properties to our project.